I parked 2 houses down like always. Not 'cause I was trying to be polite, Paige asked me to. Said the rust patches on my '07 Tacoma would clash with the aesthetic. Her parents' house had this magazine cover vibe, white lights strung like geometry, driveway power washed weekly, wreaths that probably had their own storage bins labeled in cursive. I walked in with the pie I bought from Kroger and a headache from working a half day. Inside, it was warm and fake in all the ways I'd learned to spot. Matching red sweaters, Loretta's silver serving dishes, Dawn showing Shane a whiskey bottle like it had a story. Paige was already laughing that practice too loud laugh she uses when she wants people to think everything's perfect. She didn't even make eye contact when I stepped into the kitchen, just a quick, "Hey babe," like I was the damn UPS guy. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. Loretta gave me a nod like she'd just stepped over something wet on the floor. I didn't even have time to put the pie down before the doorbell rang. And just like that, everything stopped. No music, no forks, no chatter. It was like someone yanked the cord out of the wall. Don opened the door, and my father, Harold Lawson, stood there with snow still clinging to his coat shoulders. I hadn't seen him in 10 years, not since the night he threw his keys on the counter and said he was done trying to be liked. He stepped in like the cold followed him, leaning on a walnut cane, eyes already sweeping the room. Then he spotted me. His face cracked open into this half smile, and he wrapped me in a hug like he'd been holding it in a decade. "Jesus, Brent," he muttered. "You look like your old man, finally." We sat down at the table. He took the seat beside me, like it belonged to him. Then, while the ham was getting carved and Shane was babbling about real estate, Dad cleared his throat and said loud enough to rattle the chandelier above us, "Brent, you still in that house I paid for?" My fork hit the plate. I said, "I rent a basement behind a laundromat now." You could hear Paige's inhale. She went pale so fast I thought she was choking, and my dad, he turned and looked right at Loretta. Not long, not loud, just looked. And I swear, nobody at that table took another bite until the ham got cold. Dad didn't raise his voice, didn't have to. He stood, motioned toward the living room with a nod, and everybody followed like someone called last rites. He took the middle cushion of the cream-colored couch like he owned the place. Then he pointed to the chair beside him, brown leather, stiff-backed, the one Don usually reserved for himself during game nights. I sat without saying a word. Paige hovered by the fireplace, arms crossed. Shane slumped into the recliner. Loretta stayed standing, hands clutched like she was about to lead a prayer. Dad looked at me. "What's your address?" 249 East Hemlock. Basement unit, under that nail salon with the busted pink sign. "What do you do for work?" "Cabinet installs, some home repair, week-to-week stuff." "HVAC?" "Goes out every other week. I use a space heater when it gets bad." Paige let out this soft little laugh, like she was trying to lighten the mood. It was the same one she used last year on the Kia salesman when we were upside down on her lease. "That's not fair," she said, trying to smile. "We were figuring things out, and Brent said he liked the apartment because it was affordable," Shane cut in, loud enough to draw eyes. "And temporary. It was a timing thing. With the market, we needed flexibility to..." "To what?" Dad asked, calm as ice. Shane glanced at Loretta, then back at Dad. "To invest. Wisely." Dad didn't blink. "I wired $365,000. 4 years ago. You remember that?" Nobody answered. He turned to me. "It was for a house, modest, in your name." I nodded slowly. "I never saw a house. I never held a key." The room held its breath. Dad reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, then held it out toward Shane and Paige. Text from Paige says, "He's moved in. He loves it." Dated August 3rd, 2021. Paige stared at the phone like it was a gun pointed at her. Loretta opened her mouth, but Dad cut her off with a single look. He turned back to me. "We're sorting this tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. Attorney Colin Mercer's office. Bring every statement, every receipt, every explanation." Loretta stepped forward like she was hosting again. "Harold, this is a family issue. We've all made choices together." Dad tapped his cane once on the hardwood. Just one clean, heavy crack. I felt it in my ribs. He didn't yell. Didn't have to. "It's not a family issue when you misrepresent where my money went. It's theft if you signed off with my son's name and never gave him the door code." Don tried to lean forward like he wanted to add something, but Dad turned his head, just slightly, and that tiny movement froze him solid. I sat there, fists clenched on my knees, teeth grinding. Part of me wanted to yell, ask how long they thought they could keep the lie going. Another part of me was still trying to breathe through the feeling that I was the last idiot to realize the joke was on me. Shane tried again. Maybe we can explain it all tomorrow, after the holiday. No, Dad said. Tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. Paige's voice cracked. What are you trying to do? Dad didn't even look at her. What should have been done 4 years ago? He pushed himself up with the cane, slow but steady. Brent, grab your coat. I stood. Loretta's voice followed us out. You're breaking this family apart over a misunderstanding. Dad didn't turn. No, Loretta. I'm drawing a line so they stop stepping on my son. We barely made it to the front door before Paige pulled Loretta and Don down the hallway like she was dragging them out of a fire. Shane trailed behind them, muttering something under his breath. They all filed into Don's office and shut the door. I stood in the hallway, could hear pieces through the cheap door. Bridge loan wasn't supposed to be permanent. We'll handle the paperwork later. Then the word that made my stomach clench. Pine Ridge. Dad brushed past me without asking, opened the office door like it was his own. Where'd the money go? He asked, firm. Not yelling, just heavy. Silence. Long enough for my pulse to find my ears. Then Shane snapped, the lodge at Pine Ridge Cove. Down payment only. Dad blinked. You use my money for a vacation property? Shane squirmed. It's a family cabin. Loretta jumped in, fast. It's not what you think. We used part of it, yes, but it's in the family. It was about protecting Brent from property taxes and... Stop, Dad said, flat. He looked at Paige. She didn't meet his eyes, didn't meet mine either. Dad pointed to her. You told me he was moved in, said he loved the place. Her voice barely came out. I didn't think you'd check. Loretta tried again, arms folded. If we'd put the house in Brent's name, it would have disqualified him from certain programs. It was for his benefit. Dad stepped into the room fully now. He lives behind a laundromat. You think he's too rich for assistance? Nobody answered. I felt like a fool, standing there with $20 jeans and drywall dust still under my nails, while they explained how they'd spent $365,000 meant for me, on some lakeside lodge with matching throw pillows. The same one I'd seen all over Paige's Instagram, sunrise shots, dock selfies, family escape. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Dad looked around the room like he was counting witnesses. Anyone else want to lie while I'm here? Don cleared his throat. There's no reason this can't be worked out quietly. Let's all take the night and cool off. Dad nodded once. You've got the night. I want every account statement, every transfer record, every single expense related to that property. 9:30 sharp. Colin Mercer's office downtown. What if we're not available? Loretta asked. Then I handle it my way. Shane rolled his eyes. What's that mean? Dad turned to him. It means I stop pretending I don't have connections that know how to chase paper trails across LLCs. The room went dead silent. Paige sat down slowly on the arm of the leather chair, eyes locked on the rug. I kept waiting for her to look up and say something to me. Even a lie would have landed better than nothing. Instead, she just sat there like a kid caught stealing from her own Christmas stocking. Dad looked at me. Come on, son. We walked out of that house without a goodbye. At 7:55 sharp, my phone buzzed. Dad. Outside. I threw on a hoodie and buzzed him in. The lobby light flickered like it had epilepsy, and the left handrail on the stairs was still busted from the drunk guy in 1B tripping over it 2 weeks ago. Dad climbed the stairs slow, cane in one hand, knuckles white. He didn't say a word as I unlocked my door. The place smelled like old paint and whatever incense the girl upstairs burned every morning. My window leaked when it rained, so I kept a plastic bucket underneath, half filled with dirty water. The walls were beige from 20 coats of old primer, and I had a space heater next to the couch because the building boiler was always out. Dad ran his hand along the wall near the window. Paint came off in flakes. This where you live? Yeah, I said. For now. He glanced around. Paige ever been down here? Once. He didn't push that. I showed him my little workbench near the back wall, half a sheet of MDF for a table. Few routed oak trim samples stacked on a milk crate. Cheap clamp set. My old Ryobi router that burned out once a month, unless I cleaned it regular. A dozen invoices tucked into a shoebox, half paid, half ignored. I'm working toward better, I said. Dad didn't nod, didn't disagree either. He just stood there, silent, eyes moving slow across the room, like it told a story he hadn't wanted to read. He turned back to me. Who told you this was okay? I didn't answer right away. Nobody had to, I said finally. It just kind of narrowed down to this, one piece at a time. Cheaper rent, fewer expectations. Figured I'd climb out of it eventually. Dad stepped forward and hugged me, tight but not long. Like it hurt him to do it, but not doing it would have hurt worse. You're not sleeping here again after tonight. I started to argue, but he already had his phone out. Made a call right there, landlord's number from the peeling notice on the fridge. Yeah, hi, this is Harold Lawson, Brent's father. I'd like to buy out his month-to-month, full balance, today. He pulled out a folded stack of bills and counted it out in front of the guy when he came down from Unit A. No questions, no drama. Cash shut him right up. Pack a bag, Dad said. We're not late. I shoved my work clothes, router bits, a couple flannels, and my shaving kit into a duffel I'd used since high school. Took the box of invoices too. Left the rest. As we headed out, I gave the drip bucket one last look and dumped it out in the laundry sink. We didn't talk much in the truck. He just drove downtown like we had somewhere real to be for the first time in years. And for once, I didn't feel like dead weight in someone else's story. Dad and I sat at the glass conference table with 10 minutes to spare. Colin Mercer's office had that clean, hushed feel. Floor-to-ceiling windows, heavy chairs, real wood trim. The kind of place where truth doesn't come cheap. At 9:26, the elevator pinged. Paige walked in first, jaw set like she was prepping for trial. Loretta and Don followed, still dressed like they'd come from brunch, not a reckoning. Shane brought up the rear, phone in hand. Like he was too busy to be bothered. I could still feel the elevator heat coming off them when they sat. Colin didn't waste a breath. He slid a printout across the table, neat and stapled. Wire confirmation. $365,000. Originated from Harold Lawson. Designated purpose. Primary residence. Grantee, Brent Lawson. Nobody reached for it. Then he laid down a second document, itemized ledger. Actual use of funds, he said. Line by line, it read like a confession. Down payment, Pine Ridge Cove Lodge. $172,300. Renovations, custom kitchen, boat dock, heated floors, $51,700. Anniversary trip, $14,950. Jewelry, $8,460. Furnishings, $19,600. Miscellaneous, $11,740. $0 linked to any home in my name. Each line landed heavier than the last. Loretta jumped first. It was an investment. Brent wasn't ready for home ownership. He had no credit, no stable income. Colin didn't blink. It wasn't your money to reroute, nor your decision to make. Don leaned forward, trying to puff himself up. We're a family. This should have been handled privately. Dad didn't even look at him. He just tapped the printout again, hard. She told me he moved in, said he loved it. Colin nodded. Confirmed, August 3rd, 2021. He pulled up a screenshot of the text, projected from his laptop. Paige's name in bold, her message clear. Paige folded her arms. We meant to add Brent to the deed later, after things stabilized. Colin raised an eyebrow. Then explain why the deed is held under Northridge Family Holdings, LLC, registered to Loretta Lawson and Shane Lawson. No mention of Brent, not then, not now. Nobody said a word. Colin let the silence stretch, then pulled out a final folder. This is a transfer agreement, full property title to Brent Lawson. Execution required within 10 business days. If not, I'll proceed with filing charges for fraud, misappropriation of funds, and breach of fiduciary duty. Loretta's eyes went wide. You're threatening us with court over a misunderstanding? No, Colin said. I'm offering you a chance to fix it before the sheriff gets involved. Shane scoffed. This is a power play. Dad didn't even blink. Damn right it is. The power you all thought you had? It's gone. Then he pulled a sealed envelope from his coat, opened it slow, and handed the papers to me. My revised estate plan, he said. Everything I control goes into a trust. Brent's the beneficiary. Paige, he turned to her. You're out. No say, no stake. Paige's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Shane stared hard at the table. I leaned forward and locked eyes with him. I patched ceilings with mold stains while you posted lake selfies in my house. So, yeah, this is a power play. One I didn't start, but I'll finish. Colin slid the signature pages forward. You can sign now, or we can talk to law enforcement. Their office is 4 blocks from here. Loretta's hand shook as she reached for the pen. Don tried to say something, but Colin didn't even look up. He just waited. One by one, they signed. Colin collected the papers, tapped them into a stack, and stood. Transfer will be recorded next week. I'll send confirmation, unless you want to continue this downtown at the courthouse. Nobody did. Paige didn't say anything in the office, not while the papers were signed, or when Colin clipped the packet closed. But on the way out, her face cracked. First it was disbelief, then something sharper. She turned to me just past the lobby doors, heels clicking hard on the tile, and hissed, "You're embarrassing the family." Like the damage was the spotlight, not the wound. I looked her dead in the face. I've been embarrassed for years and didn't even know it. Now I do, and I'm done wearing it for you. Her mouth opened, then shut again. I didn't wait around for round 2. Don tried to soften the edges. We can still make this right, Brent. Maybe without touching the cabin. Dad stepped in before I had to. Making him whole starts with the truth, and the truth already came with signatures. Colin stamped the memo. Notarized and sealed. Filing scheduled for the following Wednesday. No wiggle room left. We walked out into the cold. Me, Dad, and the truth dragging behind us like a shadow finally unhooked. I barely made it to the corner before Paige caught up, grabbed my sleeve. We can fix this, privately, she said. This doesn't have to blow up everything. I looked at her hand like it didn't belong to me anymore. It went public the second you spent the first $1. Her grip loosened. I kept walking. By noon, I booked a room at a short-stay suite near the 2 shops I bounced between. Kitchenette, decent Wi-Fi, clean shower. Didn't smell like mildew. I made one call to the divorce attorney Colin's paralegal had scribbled down for me. Straight shooter, no games. Got an appointment for Friday. Said I had a solid claim, especially with the house transfer and the text history. Said I wasn't the first man to find out his name got used for someone else's payday. I didn't cry, didn't punch a wall, just laid on that stiff hotel mattress, arms folded behind my head, and stared at the ceiling like it finally made sense to exist in the room I was in. First full night of sleep I'd had in years. No slamming upstairs, no cold air creeping under the window. No pretending someone loved me just because she wore the ring. The next morning, I left the space heater at the curb and tossed the drip bucket in the dumpster behind the building. Paige texted late that night, just, "We need to talk." I didn't answer. I knew she wasn't reaching for me, just for whatever story she could still control. The version where I stayed quiet, stayed useful, stayed owned. That version died in Colin Mercer's office, and I wasn't dragging the corpse into my next chapter. 10 days later, I sat in Colin's office again. He didn't smile much, didn't need to. Just opened a slim folder, pulled out a small envelope, and placed the brass keys in my hand like he was handing over something holy. "Filed and stamped," he said. "It's yours." Shane was across the room by the filing clerk, pretending like he didn't know either of us, wouldn't make eye contact, probably hoping this moment would pass without burning his name. I didn't say a word to him, just walked out with the keys in my palm and the deed folded tight in my back pocket. The drive up to Pine Ridge was dead quiet. I turned off the radio halfway through. Didn't want noise, just wanted to feel the road under the tires and let my chest get lighter, mile by mile. By the time I pulled into the gravel drive, the sun was dragging low behind the trees. The place looked like a postcard. Big glass windows facing the lake, knotty pine trim catching the dusk light. Porch swing still creaking in the breeze. I stepped inside and froze. It felt like I'd walked into someone else's picture. Leather couch, stone fireplace, one of those oversized clocks that people hang for style, not time. The kind of place you post about, not live in. I didn't sob, didn't break down. But I cried, quiet and ugly. Just enough to scrape out the gravel that had lived in my chest for years. Then I opened every damn window in the place. Let the cold air rush in and blow out every trace of the lie that was built into those walls. I stood there shivering and didn't close them until my lungs felt clean again. Next day, I cleared out the second bedroom, pushed the designer pillows into a bin, boxed up the canvas prints, and hauled in my tools. Bought a used planer off a guy in town. Set up a clamp wall from scrap lumber. Hung up my routed samples like trophies. Word got out quick. Brent at the lake does honest work for honest prices. Orders came in faster than I expected. Small jobs, mostly. Bookcases, barn doors, porch repairs. But every one of them paid clean and came with real handshakes. I called Paige that night, not to fight, just to close it out. Told you I'd be filing? I said. She scoffed. You're throwing away a marriage for a building? No, I said. I'm choosing myself for the first time, and I'm hanging up now. I did. She didn't call back. That night, I took one last lap through the cabin, touched the wall trim, ran my fingers along the kitchen counter I didn't ask for, stared out at the lake through the wide windows and set one rule in my head, clear and sharp. No lying crosses this threshold, mine or anyone else's. 2 months in, I started noticing his voice slipping. First it was breathier calls, then texts where he used to talk. One morning, he didn't answer at all, just sent "coffee okay" with a thumbs up. That's when I started driving to the care center every afternoon. I brought him fresh coffee from the diner near the tech school and a couple of the old tool catalogs I'd picked up from a job site. He'd flip through them like they bored him, but I caught him circling a sander once when he thought I wasn't looking. Your mom used to complain I smelled like sawdust for days, he said one day, grinning weakly. Better than diesel, though. I used to haul freight in a box truck with no heat, no power steering. One time I had to ratchet strap the door shut from the inside. He paused. I tried to teach you to sand with the grain. Didn't push hard enough, though. You were working, I said. I remember. He nodded like that counted for something. On a Friday, Colin called and said Dad had moved more of his holdings into the trust. Everything clean, everything airtight. Paige and her family legally shut out for good. He also set up something new, a small fund for apprentices who couldn't afford tools. Quiet move, no big announcement. Just a ledger entry and a line in the trust, used for instruction and equipment, discretion of Brent Lawson. That one hit me. I'd already started mentoring 2 kids from the local tech school. One of them, Luis, could measure to the 16th just by eye. The other, Trey, needed practice but picked up fast. I taught them how to square frames, check for wood movement, and, more than anything, how to quote a job without letting someone walk all over you. Know your worth, I told them, then double-check it. Dad came up to the lake when he could. On the good days, he stood out on the deck with his cane, just breathing deep. Said the air smelled like purpose. On the bad days, he stayed in bed and held my hand tighter than I expected. You're my legacy, he said once, barely more than a whisper. I didn't know what to say at first, but then I looked out at the lake, then back at him. I'll keep the deck planks oiled, I told him, and the door open for anyone who needs a straight answer and a seat at the table. His fingers squeezed mine, once, hard. That was the whole conversation. Didn't need more. I strung the white lights along the rafters in the morning, one line at a time, just enough to catch the grain in the old beams. No themes, no matching sweaters, just warm bulbs and quiet wood. The cabin smelled like pine and sawdust, clean, real. I brewed cocoa on the stove and set 2 mugs by the fire. Dad's chipped blue cup went on the mantel, right where I could see it from the workbench. The space felt full without feeling crowded. Snow slid across the cove like the lake was breathing slower. The only sounds were the heater ticking and the whisper of the trees pressing against the windows. No music, no fake laughter. Just peace with nothing to prove. At noon, Paige texted, "Can we talk after the holidays?" I stared at it for a few seconds, then typed, "Please contact my attorney." Set the phone face down and didn't touch it again. Later, Loretta posted a blessed family photo online, big smiles in front of a fireplace that didn't belong to them. I recognized the rental from the pinecone decor and fake birch logs. Probably captioned something like, "Home for the holidays." I looked down at my floor, sanded it myself. Every board tight, smooth, solid. Felt zero envy, just gratitude I hadn't followed them off that cliff. Outside, I poured the second mug into the snow off the deck. "I'm okay," I said to the sky. "Shop's booked out 6 weeks. Luis and Trey are getting better every day. Cabin finally feels like something I can live up to. I stood there a while, watching the lake go still again. Thought about the night Dad walked into that over-decorated house and ended the pretending with one question. Thought about all the years I spent apologizing just for being in the room, just for existing, not anymore. I locked up the shop, checked the clamps on the walnut table I was making for the single mom down the road. Tight, square, beautiful. Wrote her bill a little lighter than it should have been, just because I could. Then I turned off the lights. The windows caught my reflection for a second. Older guy, tired eyes, steady hands. And for the first time in a long time, it looked like someone I recognized. Would you have walked away sooner or waited like I did? Let me know in the comments and hit like and subscribe for more real stories.